everybody. I'm Daniel Nolan from AhanaandDaniel.com.
Hi, I'm Ahana Lara, and welcome to Manifest Your Abundant Business Now. Now, this is an interview series that we put together for you where you can meet experts, learn from their strategies, and use that wisdom to grow your heart-based business, to take it to the next level. And today we have a very special guest, and he's very special to Daniel and I because he has, he's helped us stay focused on our success and move us towards it. So I'll let Daniel introduce him to you.
Thanks. I'm excited about this one. JT's given us his time today. He's a former Navy pilot and naval officer. He spent 12 years on active duty, working his way up from an aircraft mechanic to his goal of getting his wings. Now, after he finished his service in 2008, JT began his entrepreneurial journey with his wife, Mia. And today he shares his high-performance strategies and leadership principles with others as a motivational speaker, coach, and mission accomplishment coach. Now, both Ahana and I have been blessed and lucky enough to experience JT's motivational podcast, seeing him live during an event, and just being part of that awesome energy. So thank you, JT. Welcome. And thanks again for being part of this summit and sharing your amazing story.
Hey, I appreciate you guys inviting me here and including me in this. I appreciate you both.
Thanks, man. We always do. Now, first off, I really just have to say, I want you to tell the listeners about your inspirational story of working your way up to obtaining your wings. And I know that you said that was like one of your dreams of being a pilot. So just give us a rundown on that.
Well, exactly. I mean, ever since I was probably, I guess I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. And it may have actually happened before then because my granddad, but my granddads on both sides were very influential in my life. My mother's father was a chief petty officer in the United States Navy. He was actually on Pearl Harbor when it was attacked on December 7th, 1941. So he's a Pearl Harbor survivor. And, he was just a big hero. And he took me to an air show here in Washington State. And I want to say I was about 5 years old, and the Blue Angels were there. And I just remember thinking, this is the loudest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And yet it was so really amazing. And then my father's father was a B-17 bomber pilot in World War II. And he was really probably my biggest hero in life. And I always wanted to be just like him. And, he was just like a big inspiration in my life. And so I kind of combined the two of those, the desire to serve in the U.S. Navy and the desire to fly, and really wanted to be an aviator, and more specifically wanted to be a Blue Angel, I think, just because it really kind of resonated with me. But the challenge that I had was I was a lousy student in school, and I was diagnosed very early with what at the time they were calling ADD, attention deficit disorder, and now it's got all kinds of random names, and there's a lot of controversy around kind of how they diagnosed it and how accurate that diagnosis is. Now, back in the day when I got diagnosed, they really didn't know what to do with it. And there were times where they used all kinds of, sort of, I would say, not so great words around it. There were terms, like there was, perhaps I was mentally handicapped and things like this, simply because I couldn't focus in school. And so you can imagine, teachers, coaches, friends, even very close family members of mine would say, you're not cut out for this. You don't have the scholastic aptitude, let alone the mental skill set to be able to get into college, let alone graduate college, go off and fly in the Navy. So, I had a lot of people tell me that. And I was, kind of grew up through those first formative years of my life hearing, you'll never make it, or keep your dreams more realistic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, probably hear that because entrepreneurship, much like doing something like flying airplanes, is not what the normal person wakes up to do. We don't grow up thinking, hey, I'm going to go out and risk everything. I'm going to take big risks. I'm going to put my neck out on the line and hopefully build my dream. Most people want to follow kind of the status quo. And so, it was very telling because as I started to go down the path of wanting to get really serious about being a Navy pilot and understanding what it took, the more the doors slammed in my face, the more resistance I got. And, I joined the Navy out of high school. I barely graduated high school, but I did. And I joined right out of high school, and they made me an aircraft mechanic, and I worked my way up through the ranks, and I kept applying to become an officer. because in the U.S. Navy, you have to be a full commissioned officer. You have to have a 4-year degree from a college and an accredited college in order to go to flight school and be a pilot. And so I worked really hard to do that. I met all kinds of resistance. If we had all day to tell the story, I'd tell it. But, I eventually did get into the University of Colorado at Boulder, which in and of itself was a huge victory. And a lot of people in my life thought, I can't believe you got into college, really, honestly. And I worked my way through. I actually ended up graduating. I got my degree. I was the #1 cadet. I graduated first in my class in the ROTC, or Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is kind of like the military side of college for men and women that go through college to get their degree as officers. And I made it through. I got accepted to flight school and actually graduated on September 7th, 2001. So just 4 days before 9/11. And it was a huge accomplishment. It was my mission dream, or my life mission. It was not a goal. It was not, it wasn't a dream. It was my mission. And I was willing to die for that mission. And luckily I didn't have to, but, it was something that to this day has reinforced a lot of what I teach my clients, both my entrepreneur clients, my corporate clients, and clients that have nothing to do with business. And, that's really the backstory to it. And it's something that to this day I'm grateful for. It was one of the hardest fought things I ever had to go through, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah. I mean, this is such an inspiring story. I mean, every time we hear this, JT, it just, that you're one of the reasons you're persisting, that persistence comes from, hearing stories like this. And so, all of us listening in, and you are one of the most amazing motivational speakers, but I want to ask you, how did you get from, in your entrepreneurial journey, how did you get into motivational speaking, and why?
I did. It's probably the most backwards, unconventional paths in the world, which is kind of, I guess my story anyway. Yeah. I literally, the very first time I ever spoke, it was right after we came back from our combat deployment. We flew surveillance and reconnaissance missions over Afghanistan. So we were the eye in the sky for the Navy SEALs and the Delta Force commandos on the ground. And we had about a 6-month deployment, and we flew home. It was, I want to say, second week of December. So right before, the Christmas and New Year's time of year. And we were just about to be granted 2 weeks off, 2 weeks paid vacation in what we call leave in the United States Navy. And they always had a safety brief before you went. And the safety brief started first thing in the morning, and it lasted about 3 or 4 hours. And then as soon as the safety brief is over, everybody could go away. Well, I was the last person. So my commanding officer tabbed me to be the guy to speak about highway safety, how to drive safely. Because a lot of people would drive home to their parents or to their aunts and uncles or whatever, grandparents and things like this when they got home off leave. And, so I was the guy that was supposed to give that brief to 300 people in my squadron. These are my friends, these are my peers, these are in a lot of cases, my subordinates, the people that actually reported to me, and of course my higher ups, And so they're like, you have 15 minutes to talk. You're the last guy to speak. So you are the one standing between all of your friends and your comrades and their liberty, their vacations. Don't screw it up, make it worthwhile. And I'm like, oh my God. And when most people think of public speaking, it's something, you've heard this saying before. I don't know how accurate it is, but they say that it's a fear greater than death for a lot of people. For me, I definitely felt that. I literally was thinking I might go to Canada. The thought actually passed through my mind where I was like, I should just abandon my military service. Now, I would never do that. But for the thought to come through my head is just meant to illustrate how intense that fear was. I'm supposed to stand on stage, be the last guy standing between their vacation time. We just got back off a combat deployment, and I'm supposed to deliver something. So I just went up there and I tried to be funny. I tried to be pertinent, and I tried to be quick. And, it's just one of those things like get in and get out and get off the stage. And I got a standing ovation. Everybody loved it. They were laughing. And they remembered it, which was really cool. So the part that sunk in for me was I can make an impact in a short amount of time. You don't have to be, in a 3 or 4 year tour in a squadron to make an impact. If you stand up and you deliver your best stuff in a short amount of time, then you can make an impact. And that was really big for me. I think that was a pop that happened, a kind of a breakthrough that happened for me. And I thought, this is pretty cool. But I have to tell you, I never thought, oh, I'm going to go into a career of doing this. You know, it didn't happen till after I got out of the Navy. I was asked to speak at a sales conference, and they said, hey, can you tell us a little bit of background on your Navy thing? You know, it's cool that you're a Navy pilot and now you're building your business. Can you kind of talk to us about that? So I told them my whole story and, you know, gave them some advice on, you know, how I get myself, you know, kind of focused in on how I build my business. And it blew up. And that led to a speaking engagement. That led to another one. And then pretty soon, you know, the thing snowballed and now here we are.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Now, I suppose the people here might not know that JT is probably one of the most energetic and, you know, motivated people in your own life that I know. So for the people listening in, how do you keep your energy levels so high? And what's a few simple strategies that people can use to help in their everyday life?
Well, I think the thing that I lean on the most for my energy is my fitness. I have found over just the last maybe 18 months that a direct correlation to my ability to deliver what I do tied to my fitness. And so back in 2012, I ran a marathon, and it was based on a challenge from a good friend of mine who was, you know, he's probably in his 50s at the time. And in fact, I think he probably still is. He's probably like almost 60 at this point, but he ran ultra marathons. So he would run, you know, like basically 2 or 3 marathons as one.
Yeah.
You know, like just about the time people are like limping across the finish line, he's halfway done type of thing. And, you know, this guy's almost old enough to be my dad, certainly an older brother. And he challenged me, you know, because he was a speaker as well. And we both had the same publisher for our book and or for our individual books. And he said, hey, dude, you know, you're a former athlete, you're a combat decorated pilot, and you're a slug, you know, and you should try to get yourself back into shape. You should try running. And I'm like, man, and I mean this with complete accuracy, I could not run around the block, the block of our neighborhood. I couldn't do it. I couldn't continually run. I could run and then stop and run and stop. But I started that way. You know, I started running and then I got in shape. And then, so I ended up running a marathon. The weirdest thing in the world, though, is that as soon as the marathon was over, I was beat up. My body, I mean, 26.2 miles will take it out of you. And it took about, I probably laid on the couch for 2 weeks. And at this time I was coaching people. So, you know, I could kind of sit on the couch or sit in my office and not have to physically move much, but I wasn't taking any speaking gigs. I wasn't doing anything like that. And then over the time, so this was in October of 2012. So from October, November, December, and into the new year of 2013, I had gotten to tremendously bad weight, just overweight, very bad health, wasn't feeling good. And I noticed it. And my clients noticed it, and I could hear it in my voice and the podcasts I was doing. I could read it in the words that I was putting out in blog posts and articles and things like this. And I got booked to speak at an event, and I was on stage, and they took a lot of photos, these like really high gloss photos, and they sent them to me. And they're like, I just remember going, wow, I cannot believe how out of shape I've gotten. And I was breathing heavy. And that was the connection I made. I realized this, that my clients, my audiences, my wife, my kids, all depend on me to be high energy because that's who I naturally am. You know, I've been told I'm intense. I've been told that I'm high energy and high, whatever you want to call it, high speed. But when I'm not, I'm less effective. And so to get back in the gym, to force myself to do the burpees, to force myself to not miss a workout or to take the ice cold showers and to do those things, it wasn't a question of so much discipline, although discipline's huge. It was a connection that's how I make my bread and butter. That's what people depend on. If I show up, I'm low energy and I'm not sharp, then I'm doing them a disservice. I'm not take that. That to me was huge because integrity and loyalty are two of my bigger triggers for my core values. And so I started to see myself as a pro athlete. Like, I get paid to be high energy. So I have to go to the gym, just like an athlete has to go to the gym. I have to eat well. I have to get good sleep. I have to take good care of myself. And it's not negotiable. There's no, you know, I mean, there are days, I'll be completely honest with you, I just don't feel like it. You know, I'm like, I really don't feel well. And those are the days I go. Those are the days where it counts the most. And so I will say fitness is the big one. The second one is that I don't believe in loving what you do. I don't believe in that. There's a lot of this thing about follow your bliss and love what you do. I do love what I do, but I don't love what I do for the sake of, oh, it pays me well, or I love how I do it. And I find that's where the energy comes from, because you could be a CPA, you could be a lawyer, you could be the person that scrapes, garbage and trash off the street. You don't have to necessarily love what you do, but if you love how you do it and you pour 100% of your best effort into it and you find the joy in showing up to it, I truly think that's where the energy comes from. As entrepreneurs, there are days where it absolutely positively sucks, where you just don't feel like it. There are days you go through spells, maybe days, weeks, months, maybe even years where you start to hate, building a business. Hopefully it doesn't last that long, but you can. And having gone through spells like that, I found that if I found the love in how I did it and the love for the people that I do it for, that's where everything shifts. So my energy comes from fitness, and it comes from love and how I do what I do and the people I do it for.
Beautiful. One of the things that you're working with a lot of entrepreneurs who are just starting out or have been in the business for a couple of years, and they're not able to stretch themselves. So what are the patterns? So what are some of the challenges do you see in startup entrepreneurs, and what advice do you have for them to break that?
It's interesting. A lot of the patterns that I see with entrepreneurs is everybody likes to feel good. And they feel good from that initial start. So there's two things about that. Starting is one of the hardest things, and it's one of the easiest things. So you may have a person that goes, I have this desire inside my heart to be an entrepreneur. I have this desire to go out and do my own thing. But to take that bold, courageous step to actually do it is analogous to jumping out of an airplane or speaking on stage. It's like the biggest frightening thing. So that might be hard for some entrepreneurs. For other people, it's the thing they're addicted to. And so they love the start, but they can't stand the follow through. The thing I would tell a brand new entrepreneur is that one of the most important things you can do for yourself, for your career, for your business, for your clients, for every aspect of building a business is to get over the feelings of business. Because your feelings are typically false. If you don't feel like doing it, it's the most direct way I can say it is you got to suck it up and do it. If you feel amazing, that's cool. Enjoy that amazing feeling, but don't allow the amazing feeling to take you away too much. It's about finding a balance. It's about saying there are days where it's just absolutely you're going to feel like you are in the flow. You're going to feel like everything you touch turns to gold. Every, sales call you make closes. Every person that clicks on your website is going to go, wow, this is amazing. And then there are going to be those spells, which are typically longer, where it feels flat, it feels slow, it feels stagnant, it feels boring, it feels tedious. And so you just have to go, it's just another day in business. And so the single most important thing you can do when you're new, and this is actually true for, I've got clients I've been working with for years. I tell them the same thing is you literally have to just get over your feelings and not allow the feelings to drive you. It's okay to feel good, man. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But, when you don't feel good, then what? So my hardcore advice to a new entrepreneur or to a veteran entrepreneur is don't allow your feelings to dictate your actions. You got to act no matter what. You got to show up every single day, and you got to give your best effort. And here's the best thing, the little caveat I'll add to this. If you're feeling amazing, it's your best day ever. You're well rested. You're feeling awesome. Your energy's high. That means you're giving like 100% of what you got, right? And if you give 100% of it, that's awesome. But on the days where your head is pounding and you're tired and you're disheartened and you're like, man, nobody wants to say yes to me, your energy's at 50%. If you give 100% of that 50%, if that's all you got in the tank is 50% of the tank and you burn the tank out, that to me is playing like a champion. That to me is one of the boldest, most courageous things you can do is to give all of that 50% or 60% or 70%, because anybody can give 100% of their 100%, right? When you feel good, it's awesome. But when you show up and you're like, dude, I don't feel like it. As long as you burn the candle all the way out on those days, those are the days that matter.
Yeah. And what people don't realize is there's ups and downs, but there's a lot of downs in the entrepreneurial journey, and you gotta, stick to your goals. So I know that, when we were doing goal setting with you, JD, and it was just fascinating. The process of it literally transformed our lives within a matter of like 2 months. I think I still remember it was like a couple of weeks and I hit my goals, and it was amazing. So can you give us some steps, because there'll be a lot of people trying to set goals now, steps to set goals and sticking with them.
Okay, great. So as you know, I don't believe in goal setting, and the whole concept of SMART goals does not work.
Yeah.
I believe in goal achievement. And so goal achievement is a process. And what I've taught you guys, you've gone through my programs and the processes, is pretty simple and it's straightforward. And it's this: you get very, very clear on what it is you want. I recommend that you set 3 top priorities. That's it. These people come to me and they got a list of goals, 40, 50 items long. These are the things that I want to achieve. And I think that's great. I think you should have those. And then you look at the top 3, the 3 that matter the most to you, and you put the rest of those aside. If your big goal is to pay off your student loans, if your big goal is to buy the house, if your big goal is to, to get the business to a place where you can basically cruise, sell the thing in 5 years and then you're set, then that's the only thing you focus on. And you focus on it for as long as it takes. Now, the thing I teach you guys is how to break it down into 5 to 10, critical steps, and then work your way toward that. But the most important thing is get really clear on what you want and get clear on where you are relative to it. When you know those 2 pieces, then you can build the plan to get there. And anything's achievable. So case in point, when I went to run my marathon, when I first made the commitment, right, it's one thing to say, oh, I'd love to do that. It's another thing to commit to it, right? So you have the desire, you have the decision, and then you have the commitment, right? So the desire, everybody's got. The decision, that's the first filtration process. That's the first part where the wannabes go away and the gonna-bees are like, okay. And then once you actually commit and jump and you're actually doing it, then everything changes. So once I went through that process, I realized, okay, my goal is to go 26.2 miles and not a foot or a step shorter. I'm going 26.2 miles in one day. And I'm going to do it on October 12th, 2012. So I set the plan, but I had to know where I was starting from, because my friend Walt, the guy that inspired me, his training plan was going to be way different than mine. As entrepreneurs, if your goal is to, hey, we're going to make our first $1 million, or we're going to get the business up to $5 million or $10 million, and you're starting out, you haven't made your first sale, your plan's going to be vastly different than a company that's been consistently making, a 5% climb or a 3% climb annually in their business. And so you have to know where you are relative to your target. Mm-hmm. And one of the most fascinating things I've seen, and it's not just in new entrepreneurs, by the way, this is in seasoned executive teams and corporations and even some of my entrepreneurs that have been around for a while, is they're like, okay, we're going to make this jump. We're going to 10X. We're going to do this. They get all excited about it, but they are not real clear on where they are relative to that target. And again, it feels awesome to pound your chest and tell the world we're going to go kick ass and, take the world over. But you got to know where you are relative to that, and if you need the time, the money, the assets, and the people, if you need the planning, if you need the way forward, then this is the time to get clear on it. Not when you're, 15 steps down the road and you go, holy cow, we're going off in the wrong direction. We should have been over here instead of over here. So it's really important that let me be perfectly clear. You get clear on what it is you want to hit. You come down to your top 3 priorities at most, and you get clear on that, and you say, this is what I want to hit and when. And then you start where you are. You get clear on where you are relative to that thing, and then you start building your steps backwards, 10 to 15 steps backwards. You don't have to have all the steps. You don't have to have all the answers. But if you think backwards, I find that's typically the best way to get clear on the path that you have to take. Next thing is you reach out to your coaches, your mentors, your friends, people that have been down that path, and you bounce it off of them. But it's important that you come armed with a plan and an idea first. If you just go, hey, I want to do this, but I don't know how to start, that doesn't tell a mentor or a coach much. It tells them that you're a dreamer, but it doesn't tell them you're committed. So it's that kind of a process that is totally different in terms of goal setting. Because a lot of times people are like, I'm going to get specific, measurable, blah, blah, blah. And they start going down the whole SMART goal thing. And there's no strategy to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of a nice way to write out a very specific goal, which is cool, but it's the actual action part that matters.
Yeah.
No, really great you brought that up, because that seems to be a big challenge with a lot of people. It's, you know, it's great writing down all these things like what's your top 10 goals you want to achieve this year, but unless you do have a starting point and, like, I suppose milestones that you're going to get to along the way, it's very hard just manifesting something which, you know, could be completely out of your range at that time.
That's right. And it's okay if it's out of your range, as long as you're honest with yourself and you've calibrated your expectation. Because here's the real danger. You know, people will say, hey, I'm going to make $1 million in my first year. Okay, that's fantastic. And I appreciate the motivation. But if you've never started a business before, if you've never asked for the sale, if you've never set up, you know, a distribution channel, whether it's an online thing where you've got a capture page and you've got, you know, traffic going to the capture page and then a way to deliver on the promise. If you've never done that before and you want to go from 0 to 1 million, you have to calibrate that expectation and ask, is it reasonable? Not, is it possible? Nobody's saying it's impossible. The question is it reasonable? And it's okay if it's, you know, if you're talking about, if it's something that's super out of reach, if it really challenges you and pushes you. But the single most important advice that I got from a mentor when I first started business was, think of it like climbing a ladder. You can reach, and there's all those rungs up that ladder, and you can eventually hit that top rung. But if you try to reach for a rung that's just out of reach and you lose grip, you're going to fall off the ladder altogether, and that does nobody any good. So it's better to not fall. It's better to reach and put yourself in that place where you're really stretching, but don't overreach and put yourself in a dangerous position where you might fall.
Yeah. And expectations are that, I think, if you know, when you expect that, oh, I'm going to hit that number and you don't, and then there's this whole thing that comes with it, which is really, really dangerous for an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and just add to that, and be unrealistic, because a lot of people, they'll sit there, and you already talked about trying to sit there and get there and reach the rung. But a lot of people I've talked to, they're saying, right, I'm going to sit there and get to this certain part in 3 months. And then they don't get there in 3 months. And then the energy levels just completely drop down again. And it's actually just that them getting started again and taking action, because in their mind, their goal says, in this amount of time, I was going to be here. And if that was unobtainable for them at that time, it's usually devastating and so hard for them to push forward again. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing which a lot of us have to learn as entrepreneurs or fitness goals or whatever it is. We've just got to really go at our own pace and make sure that we keep doing it and not give up. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I just want to add this one too. So yeah, obviously we met you in Phuket, as we were talking about there, and it was great to see you on stage and inspire everyone in the crowd. But so obviously we know you have a busy lifestyle. Like today, you've already come from something and given us the time for the interview. So I suppose my question I have to ask is, how do you really balance the family side of it? Time with the wife, time with the kids, time with the friends, time for your fitness and everything, and with all that travel, with all the events and everything on your plate.
You know, it's a great question. And I will say this, I don't believe in balance.
Okay.
The whole concept of work-life balance is complete and utter. It doesn't exist. And I'll tell you why.
Doesn't work.
If you try to, and this is specific for entrepreneurs. Now, if you have a 9-to-5 job and you're just kind of showing up and punching a clock, you can probably get something close to balance. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to do something significant in your life, just plan on never being in balance. The key is this: you got to go hard like a mad person, like a crazy person, until you hit that particular goal, and then you reset. Mm-hmm. So for instance, we'll go back to the $1 million or the next $1 million, right? So whether it's your first million or your next million, if you're like, hey, we're going to do this, maybe it's a product launch, maybe it's, you know, you're rolling out a brand new initiative in your business, maybe you're writing a book. I've got something that's coming up in my business that, you know, we're going to be, you know, letting loose here pretty soon. And so what that means is I sit down with my wife and my kids, my family, and I go, listen, there's going to be a time for the next several weeks, however long it's going to be, where I'm going to be very unattainable. You know, I'm going to be up in my office. You're unreachable, not unattainable. You're going to knock on my door and I'm going to ignore you. There are going to be times where, you know, dinner is going to be me eating with you guys and then leaving and going right back up to the office. And I want you to know that it's not because I don't want to be around you. Now, I don't have to have this intellectual conversation with them anymore because they understand. All I have to say is, hey, this is what's going on and I need your patience. here's the commitment. When this thing's done on January 15th or July 15th or whatever the date is, as soon as that's done, everything goes to the back burner and you will be my center of attention. So what you do is, it's just like anything else. If you look at the trend of anything, the stock market, the gold market, the housing market, you'll see that there's peaks and valleys, right? But the overall trend is going to be growth. And so you could argue that there is some balance with, like the overall trend. So you're going to have this peak where all you do is you're committed to your big dream, your big goal. You're going to launch the business, write the book, run the marathon, where you're just a mad person. You're crazy. And then you hit the target and then you drop off. And pretty soon now, you're more focused on the family. You're focused on the other stuff, your social commitments, your civic commitments, things like this. And then you do it again, and pretty soon over time you have built this amazing life. And along the way, you haven't left this like trail of wreckage behind you with your relationships because you've communicated it with them. And so anytime I travel, I always get, usually when I go on a business trip, I will schedule the day or the 2 days after I get back where I am unreachable by the world and I'm just committed to my family. If heaven forbid I ever get sick or injured or anything like that, from working out or from traveling or doing the things that I'd love to do, then I will have to adjust to that. But when it comes to really pushing for something, I don't believe in balance. And I think you have to be careful though, because man, we glorify hustle. We glorify grind. We glorify all this 10X crap from all these gurus who are making millions of dollars off of dreamers to listen to their BS. The fact of the matter is, if you're 100% hustle, grind, and push all the time, you will be somebody nobody wants to be around. You will die an early death. You'll die a lonely death, and it will be very unfulfilling. So don't buy into that hype. But understand that there are times where, as you push, you're going to push hard, and you're going to need that love and support. They're going to have to understand you. But as soon as that goal is hit, it's your job to back off and give back to them.
Yeah.
I love the way that you explain that, and I think in my mind I'm glad that I worded it the way balance, because that's completely the wrong word, and you've just really shown that right there. Balance is just something that we say, but I'm glad you explained it that way. That's fantastic. That's a really good answer.
Awesome.
And we can, JT, we can go on the whole day with you because it's just amazing. Just this short 30 minutes is we are all energized. But I do want to, ask you were going to give something away because I want, people to experience more of you. It's amazing, your work. So could you let us know a little bit about what you're giving away and how we can access that?
Sure. So a few years back, I had put together some of my best philosophies. I'd written them down. I'd been notes that I'd taken in my journal from working with clients, things that had worked with me, with some of the things that I struggled with, things that I had worked to get past, some of my fears, some of my doubts, some of my, how do I get to that next level type of, concern? How do I solve the Rubik's Cube? How do I get past this feeling like I have to be balanced all the time? How did I get to where I am now? And I started talking more about it. And what I found is people really love to hear it. So what I did is I created a program called the Weekly Momentum Shift. And what it was designed to be was each Monday, I would send out an MP3 recording, and it would just give a quick, 5, maybe 10-minute quick hit for people to actually listen, give them a little bit of a boost, the little jolt of energy, but also strategically something they could work with. And so I put that course together. I used to sell it. I used to give it away, but now I'm giving it for free. So if people go to flywithjt.com, they'll get immediate access. They'll get their very first audio. And then each Monday thereafter, for the next 51 weeks, they'll get another audio. So it's like a full year. And the reason I did that is I'm somebody who believes that you got to keep coming back to it again and again and again. And so for a full year, I can be in your email inbox. You can put it on an MP3 player and listen to it on the treadmill, or listen to it on a walk, listen to it in your car. But more importantly, you can also share it with other people. And so I enjoy that. I think it's really powerful. And so my offer is 52 weeks of the Weekly Momentum Shift. You'll learn strategy. You'll learn mindset. You'll learn actionable steps for your goals. You'll learn the mental toughness that you need to follow through. And more importantly, I think you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And so you'll get those audios each week for the next 52 weeks, and you can get that at flywithjt.com.
Yeah, and we are on it, and we can tell you we listen to that podcast, and that's what keeps us going. Yeah.
Awesome.
So thank you for that. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, just on this video at the bottom on the link there for the people that are looking at this. So I'll definitely be able to access it. So
wonderful.
All right. Well, we won't keep you too much in your busy day. I was going to say is thank you very much for giving us this time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and as an interview, it's an extra bonus. So yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you both. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.